This story began on the day of the MC, Hyun-sung, graduation. A day that was meant to be the happiest moment in his miserable life. But instead of tossing his cap into the air, he was tossed from the rooftop of his school building by the same jackass who had bullied him throughout his years in school. They had finally reached their limit and decided to end Hyun-sung's life once and for all. As Hyun-sung plummeted from the building, his entire life flashed before his eyes, and in an instant, he cemented himself to the hard, cold surface of the ground. After the fall, Hyun-sung was left in a coma and hospitalized for 3 long months. His old man, who had raised him after the tragic loss of his parents, was devastated when the nurse informed him that they had done all they could. The only option left was to wait, leaving Hyun-sung in a vegetative state until he could regain consciousness on his own. This heartbreaking news shattered the old man's spirit into 1,000 pieces, and he wept, pleading for Hyun-sung to return, vowing never to give up on him. A month later, Hyun-sung's younger brother, Hyun-jin, visited him and revealed something horrifying. He told his comatose brother that he, too, had been harassed and assaulted by the very same bastard who had turned him into a human potato. Hyun-jin also shared that their grandmother had been breaking her old wretched back, working tirelessly at a restaurant to pay for Hyun-sung's hospital bills, only to injure herself in the process. Although unconscious, these words reached Hyun-sung's subconscious mind, deeply wounding him, as he loved his grandmother more than anyone in this cruel world. Weeks turned into months, and though death loomed over him, Hyun-sung clung to life with an unbreakable will. A few years passed, and while still comatose, Hyun-sung overheard 2 nurses gossiping about how his grandmother had collapsed from overwork. This news hit him harder than the fall of the rooftop ever did. Filled with rage, he wished for nothing more than to take revenge on the worthless scum who had done this to him, including the spineless teachers who had allowed it all to happen. In his heart, he prayed that the universe would grant him a miracle. One last chance to exact his vengeance. Every night, Hyun-sung fantasized about brutal scenarios where he unleashed terror on his tormentors. But in reality, he couldn't even open a can of tuna, let alone strike back at those who wronged him. 10 long years passed with no sign of improvement. However, just when he had lost all hope, something extraordinary happened. He found himself in a transcendental white space, moving backwards through time. At that moment, Hyun-sung was reincarnated, waking up in his freshman year of high school. As he opened his eyes, he found himself in a familiar classroom where students were slacking off, which left him utterly shocked. The school bullies were up to their usual morning routine, tormenting the weak, just as they had before. The entire scene felt like déjà vu to Hyun-sung, an echo of the day he had been bullied to the brink of death. He wondered if it was just some twisted dream, and his mind replaying the horrific experience. None of it was real. In an attempt to break free from the nightmare, the brainless moron pinched his cheek, hoping to wake up. But the pain was real. He then stabbed his thigh with a pen, enduring intense pain, yet nothing changed. He was still in that classroom. Just then, Park Min-chol, one of the evil bullies, knocked a disgusting fatso to the ground, relentlessly stomping on his face like a pinata. Hyun-sung imagined walking up to this sadistic scoundrel and calmly asking him to stop. But then the memories of being treated like garbage by these bullies came flooding back. He realized this wasn't the time for calm words, as the universe had handed him a rare second chance, and he was choosing violence this time around.
I'll kill you a lot.
Fueled by a newfound sense of revenge, Hyun-sung stood up with big energy and marched straight toward Park Min-chol. He demanded that the worthless bastard stop, which made the ugly blonde punk smirk in disbelief. Park Min-chol then threatened Hyun-sung, telling him to get lost or he'd be next in line for the face makeover. But this time, Hyun-sung didn't hesitate. With perfect balance, he delivered a resounding punch, landing squarely on Park Min-chol's traumatized face, leaving him dazed and bleeding from the mouth. Before Hyun-sung became the target of relentless bullying, life seemed to go on as usual. It was just another ordinary day with students lazing around and flirting. Meanwhile, Park Min-chol, the reigning bully king, was glued to his seat, playing Call of Duty Mobile like he was in an Olympic event. Out of nowhere, a wave of frustration hit Park Min-chol, so he decided to take it out on Lee Jung-min, the class weirdo with a noticeably enormous fat head. Approaching Lee Jung-min, he demanded that the fat loner help him with his game, knowing the kid's reputation as a quiet, nerdy face who hardly showered. Fearful of having his face used as a mop to clean the classroom floor, Lee Jung-min complied. From that moment on, he became Park Min-cheol's unwilling gaming assistant, even to the point where his grades started plummeting. But it didn't stop there. Park Min-cheol also demanded that Lee Jung-min spend his pocket money on in-game purchases to boost his character. Eventually, the pressure became too much. One day, Lee Jung-min snapped and told Park Min-cheol he didn't want to be treated like a useless toy anymore. Infuriated by this defiance, Park Min-cheol responded with violence and started to beat the living daylight out of the poor dude. Meanwhile, Hyun-sung, the class captain, watched the whole scene unfold as if it were a tragic soap opera. He couldn't just stand there, remembering all the good times Lee Jung-min had helped him with his studies. So, against the warnings of a random loser who told him he'd be digging his own grave, Hyun-sung decided to intervene. He figured his athletic, ripped body would give him the upper hand. So he approached Park Min-cheol and demanded that he stop using Lee Jung-min as a punching bag. Just as the tension between them was about to explode, the teacher entered the classroom, and the situation was put on hold. However, the moment the teacher left, Hyun-sung paid the price for intervening. Park Min-cheol and his goons beat him mercilessly, dragging him across the floor like yesterday's garbage. From that day on, Hyun-sung lived in a personal hell, enduring daily beatings without a single day off. Now fast forward to the present, where Hyun-sung has just landed a brutal punch on Park Min-cheol's smug face. The entire class is left in stunned silence. Park Min-cheol, unable to comprehend that he had just been slapped by someone he saw as a weak loser, tried to retaliate. But before he could make a move, Hyun-sung grabbed him by the hair and smashed his head against the desk. The assault didn't stop there. Hyun-sung unleashed all his pent-up rage, pummeling Park Min-cheol's face over and over. For the 10 years Hyun-sung had been in a coma, he had fantasized about this exact moment, replaying his revenge in his mind countless times. Now, he wasn't holding back, beating Park Min-cheol as if he were a worthless thief. As Park Min-cheol tried to shield himself from the relentless punches, Hyun-sung hurled a chair at him, determined to draw blood. At that moment, Park Min-cheol's minions, hearing their leader's muffled cries, rushed into the classroom, demanding that Hyun-sung stop. But Hyun-sung, driven by years of anger and hatred, refused. He turned to the group, declaring that he wasn't backing down. The toughest of the gang, Kang Chang-suk, an ugly swole dude with a face which looked worse than a troll, stepped forward, threatening to send Hyun-sung straight to Nirvana. The two began sizing each other up, the air thick with tension. Just as they were about to clash, the teacher's sudden presence in the hallway forced them to pause, with Kang Chang-suk vowing to finish Hyun-sung after class. Throughout the lesson, Park Min-cheol sat in disbelief, still reeling from the humiliation. His rage boiled over, and he silently swore to make Hyun-sung pay for the embarrassment in front of the entire class. His minions, equally eager for violence, could barely contain themselves, itching for the moment the teacher would leave so they could settle the score. Several agonizing hours later, the teacher finally left. Without wasting a second, Park Min-cheol stood, ready to carry out his promise of using Hyun-sung's head as a bowling ball. But before he could make a move, Hyun-sung unleashed a Van Damme-style high kick to his face, sending Park Min-cheol crashing to the ground, knocked out cold. Bending down, Hyun-sung grabbed his head, whispering that the beating wasn't over, it would pick up right where they left off. At the same time, Park Min-cheol's goons, having finished their own class, got up from their seats and headed straight to Hyun-sung's classroom, intent on beating him up. As they approached, they noticed a crowd of students gathered outside, peeking through the windows, watching as Hyun-sung pummeled Park Min-cheol like a helpless child. Realizing what was happening, they stormed into the classroom to rescue Park Min-cheol and unleash their fury on Hyun-sung. Once inside, they saw Hyun-sung holding Park Min-cheol by the collar, his fist raised, ready to smash his face in again. Without hesitation, Kang Chang-suk charged at Hyun-sung, but his attack was as pathetic as his horrendous face. Hyun-sung swiftly grabbed an iron padlock and smashed it against Kang Chang-suk's blobfish face. The assault didn't stop there. Hyun-sung struck him repeatedly, targeting every part of his disgusting face and meathead. With one final swing, Hyun-sung knocked Kang Chang-suk senseless, sending him to the floor, unconscious from the repeated blows to his skull. Witnessing this brutal scene, the other bullies were frozen in shock, unable to comprehend why they were so helpless against Hyun-sung's relentless attacks. But Hyun-sung wasn't done. Still seething with vengeance, he locked eyes on Cho Yong-taek, the next target, who stood trembling. Without missing a beat, Hyun-sung picked up the iron padlock once more and lunged at Cho Yong-taek, spearing him to the ground like Roman reigns. He then proceeded to rain down brutal punches, blood splattering as Cho Young-taek fell unconscious. For years, Hyun-sung had played this revenge scenario over and over in his mind, knowing exactly how every move would unfold. His mission wasn't complete yet. Struggling with exhaustion, his body starting to give out, Hyun-sung forced himself to his feet, determined to finish what he started. He turned his gaze to the final bully, Jung Min-ho, who was sweating profusely and nearly pissed his pants. In that moment, Jung Min-ho didn't see Hyun-sung. He saw a demon in a school uniform, and it made him tremble even more. As Hyun-sung approached, he raised his fist, ready to land a devastating Makonachi-style punch on Jung Min-ho's terrified face. But just before he could strike, the teacher arrived, bursting into the room just in time and demanding to know what was happening. A few minutes later, the corrupt teacher, Kim Young-chol, who looked like Smeagol with a filter, quickly pulled Hyun-sung aside, scolding him for beating up 3 students and sending them to the hospital. With a sneer, the teacher warned that the parents of those students would definitely press charges, and Hyun-sung would have to take full responsibility for his actions. However, Hyun-sung, unshaken, responded coldly, telling Kim Young-chol to stick to what he did best: bury the issue and cover up the evidence. Enraged by this defiance, Kim Young-chol landed a brutal knock to Hyun-sung's head, hard enough to rattle his brain. But at that moment, Hyun-sung's memories flooded back, reminding him that his downfall wasn't just because of Park Min-chol and his gang. It was also because of negligent teachers like Kim Young-chol, who turned a blind eye to violence and suffering happening right under their noses, and chose to stay silent instead of taking action. As Kim Young-chol raised his hand to strike again, Hyun-sung issued his own threat. He warned Kim Young-chol to handle the situation with the parents or face exposure. Hyun-sung vowed to reveal that Kim Young-chol had been taking bribes from parents, especially from Jung Min-ho's family. He went on to threaten that he would also expose the steamy love romance he was having with the English teacher, and that there were plenty more secrets he could unravel if the abuse didn't stop. Back when Hyun-sung was being bullied, he decided to report the issue to a teacher. One fateful day, he approached Kim Young-chol and reported how Park Min-chol and his gang were harassing him. Kim Young-chol called Park Min-chol and his guys into his office and asked for their side of the story. Predictably, Park Min-chol denied everything, claiming they were just having fun and that Hyun-sung had misunderstood the situation. Without further investigation, Kim Young-chol dismissed the case. Unfortunately, Hyun-sung's decision to report their behavior only made things worse. Angered by his complaint, Park Min-chol and his gang dragged him to the school rooftop and beat him to a pulp. To make matters worse, Kim Young-chol himself saw the assault, but instead of intervening, he turned a blind eye, allowing the boys to continue their brutal attack until they were satisfied. After this betrayal, Hyun-sung realized he couldn't rely on any teacher to help him. He decided he would have to fight back on his own terms. Determined, he made a plan to confront the bullies one by one, and then he started with Jung Min-ho. Catching the dude alone, Hyun-sung suplexed him to the ground and smashed his face in. Afterwards, Jung Min-ho's parents, furious, came to the school to report the attack. Hyun-sung, in turn, called his elderly grandfather to the school to defend him. However, the teachers had already been bribed by Jung Min-ho's parents. They let the other students off the hook and blamed Hyun-sung entirely, branding him as violent and posting his name on the school's bulletin board. All of this taught Hyun-sung a hard lesson that broke people had no opinion. So while he was in a coma, he realized that if he was ever to exact his revenge, he'd have to deal with the corrupt adults who protected his tormentors. Back in the present, after receiving Hyun-sung's threat, Kim Young-chol found himself trapped. The last thing he wanted was trouble with his wife, the rumored breadwinner of their family. With this realization weighing on him, Kim Young-chol lowered his head and asked what Hyun-sung wanted. Hyun-sung told him it was simple. He wanted the teacher to continue doing what he did best: nothing. He asked Kim Young-chol to remain an onlooker, not just for Park Min-chol, but also for his future actions. In return, he promised to keep Kim Young-chol's secrets safe. Kim Young-chol, seeing no other choice, agreed to the terms. With their agreement made, Hyun-sung walked away from the teacher like a true Sigma, already plotting his next move. He immediately returned to Jung Min-ho's class, ready to finish what they'd started. Before then, Jung Min-ho had been boasting about how he'd take Hyun-sung's life if given the chance, trying to rile up his classmates. But when Hyun-sung stepped into the classroom, the sissy tough act crumbled. The moment he saw Hyun-sung, His confidence evaporated, and he nearly crossed to the afterlife. Without saying a word, Hyun-sung demanded that they pick up where they had left off. Before Jung Min-ho could process the situation, Hyun-sung landed a powerful punch to his face, sending him flying to the ground. Hyun-sung followed it up with a roundhouse kick, landing squarely on Jung Min-ho's worthless face. As he lay there dazed and in pain, Jung Min-ho couldn't understand why this maniac was so determined to destroy him. But Hyun-sung didn't stop. He unleashed a barrage of punches, each blow more brutal than the last. Desperate, Jung Min-ho spotted Kim Young-chol passing by the classroom and thought salvation had arrived. After all, the teacher had always protected him in the past, thanks to his parents' money. But to Jung Min-ho's horror, Kim Young-chol turned a blind eye, walking away as Hyun-sung continued to pound his face. Meanwhile, a few minutes before Jung Min-ho's beatdown, Kim Young-chol was in the men's restroom, anxiously contemplating the threat Hyun-sung had issued. His mind raced, trying to figure out how best to handle the situation. The parents of the injured boys, particularly Jung Min-ho's wealthy and influential family, would not take the matter lightly. With their wealth, influence, and the fact that they were the school's top financial sponsors, Kim Young-chol felt like his brain was going to explode just thinking about it. That's when a 500 IQ idea struck him. Perhaps he could salvage the situation by separating Jung Min-ho from the mess. After all, Hyun-sung hadn't gotten to him yet. Rushing to find Hyun-sung, Kim Young-chol headed straight to Jung Min-ho's class. But when he arrived, he was horrified. Not only had Hyun-sung already gotten to Jung Min-ho, but the dude's face was completely wrecked. He now looked like a hideous drag queen. Kim Young-chol stood stunned and frozen. If he intervened, Hyun-sung would expose his affair with the English teacher, and his career would be over. In that moment, Kim Young-chol chose to do what he did best, nothing. Back to the present, Hyun-sung continued his relentless assault, completely destroying Jung Min-ho's face and making him look like he was beaten by Hulk. Satisfied with his masterpiece, Hyun-sung finally sat down, savoring the sweet taste of revenge. He knew the school management would react soon enough, adding another body bag to the list of students he'd sent to the hospital. A few hours later, the school's management held an emergency meeting to address the chaos. The principal, Da-won, a man with the face of a perpetually depressed donkey, was furious. He ranted about the assault, especially the injuries to Jung Min-ho. Da-won classified Hyun-sung's actions as unacceptable and insisted he should be punished severely. His call for punishment was quickly seconded by the thirsty, plot-filled English teacher, Lee Min-young, who boldly proposed Hyun-sung be expelled from the school altogether. However, before she could say much more, Kim Young-chol signaled her to shut her mouth.
Shut up!
He whispered harshly, reminding her that if Hyun-sung were expelled, their intense love affair would become the latest news headline. Instead of acting like a dense moron, he suggested she focus on protecting Hyun-sung. After silencing the Kim Young-chol addressed Da-won, pointing out that the boys Hyun-sung had attacked were not innocent. They had bullied students for years, and Hyun-sung's violent retaliation was a natural reaction to being victimized. Despite this, the scummy old principal, who was primarily concerned about the financial support from Jung Min-ho's parents, made it clear that the issue couldn't just be swept under the rug. He announced that the matter would be revisited in a week, and until then, Hyun-sung would be suspended to reflect on his psychiatric behavior. As the meeting concluded, Kim Young-chol hurried after Hyun-sung, trying to explain that he had done his best to defend him, but the situation with Jung Min-ho tied his hands. He begged Hyun-sung to be patient and promised to handle things eventually. On hearing the paper bag face pathetic excuse, Hyun-sung smirked. Hyun-sung promised that until the date he graduated, he would make Kim Young-chol's life hell. Not only that, but he also vowed to extend the same courtesy to his side chick, Lee Min-young. With that, he walked away, his blood boiling with rage. Part of him wanted to beat Kim Young-chol into the ground, just like he had done to Park Min-chol and the others, but he knew the teacher was still useful in his grander plan for revenge. With that, Hyun-sung returned to his classroom, grabbed his backpack, and left like a true protagonist. The other students stared in awe as he walked out of the school, smugly promising he would return, and this time, with a plan so twisted that not even the ugly old creep of a principal would see it coming. Shortly after leaving the school, Hyun-sung walked home, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. After 10 long years in a coma, he could finally stroll through the familiar alleyway again. In that moment, he thought of his grandmother and felt thankful for this second chance at life. for the opportunity to reunite with his family. When he arrived home, he frantically searched for his grandmother but couldn't find her. Then he remembered that she was always at work around this time. Seeing it as an opportunity, Hyun-sung decided to put his revenge plan on paper. As he pieced together the perfect scheme, he realized that 3 key conditions had to be met for his plan to succeed. First, he needed manpower. Since he couldn't transform into a martial arts master like Jason Statham in such a short time, he concluded he needed to find an already established heavyweight boxer to train him. Second, he needed allies. This revenge mission wasn't something he could accomplish alone. He needed people with similar goals who could play significant roles in his plan. Lastly, he needed the backing of a wealthy and influential family. He required resources, influence, and connections. With his fate as a student to be determined in a week, securing the support of an influential family was crucial to staying in school. Meanwhile, on the other side of town in a police station, a random dude named Go Chang-bom, the eldest son of a wealthy and powerful family, had just been arrested for assaulting a group of thugs. Infuriated, he demanded the police release him, insisting that his family's status made it illegal to arrest someone of his standing. Just then, a disgruntled policeman, who looked like his wife had just cheated on him, yelled at Go Chang-bom to shut up, saying that the law applied to everyone, no matter how rich or connected. Angered by the insult, the arrogant face kicked the desk for being so close to him at this angry point in his life. Noticing the tension, the senior officer in the station calmly told Go Chang-bom to relax, reminding him that, despite being the eldest son of the famous Munjin family, the law still applied to him. Realizing that throwing tantrum like a spoiled brat wouldn't help, Go Chang-bom took a deep breath and assessed the situation. His father was on the verge of making an important succession announcement, and any scandal involving him would give his younger brother, Go Chang-suk, the upper hand in their competition for control of the family business. It was vital to keep this incident quiet. In the calmest tone he could muster, Go Chang-bom explained that the losers had attacked him first, and he was only defending himself. The senior officer, however, said that without CCTV footage, there was no proof to support his claim. At that moment, Hyun-sung, who had been silently observing the entire scene, stood up and declared that he could testify on behalf of Go Chang-bom. He then showed the officers a video on his phone that captured the thugs attacking Go Chang-bom first. The officers were stunned and asked how Hyun-sung got the footage. Hyun-sung explained that he had witnessed the incident while passing by and decided to be the cameraman. Hyun-sung's intervention saved the day. Hyun-sung had clarified that Go Chang-bom had only acted in self-defense. Hearing Hyun-sung defend him was like music to Go Chang-bom's ears. He threw an arm around Hyun-sung's shoulders, proudly showing the cops that Hyun-sung was his bro. With the evidence cleared up, the police apologized and allowed Go Chang-bom to leave. As they exited the station, Go Chang-bom thanked Hyun-sung and vowed never to forget the favor. He even offered Hyun-sung $10,000 as a token of gratitude. Seeing the cash, the crackhead brokey grabbed it eagerly, his face lighting up like a broke man who had just hit the jackpot. But as soon as he pocketed the money, his demeanor changed from innocent to cunning. He told Go Chang-bom that he knew exactly who he was and how he was competing with his younger brother for control of their father's business. This revelation stunned Go Chang-bom. While in his coma, Hyun-sung had subconsciously picked up bits of news about the Munjin family and the ongoing rivalry between the two brothers. Armed with this knowledge, Hyun-sung asked for just an hour of Go Chang-bom's time to discuss a proposal, one that would benefit them both. After leaving the police station, Hyun-sung and Go Chang-bom went to a nearby restaurant. Over a meal, Hyun-sung showed Go Chang-bom the full video of the attack by the thugs. Once the video ended, Hyun-sung explained that the 3 men had arrived much earlier and were waiting for him. They had deliberately provoked him, hoping Go Chang-bom would react. He further revealed that this wasn't a random incident. It had been orchestrated by none other than Go Chang-bom's younger brother, Go Chang-suk, in an attempt to undermine him. On hearing this, Go Chang-bom was stunned. He couldn't believe that his own brother would go to such lengths for the sake of the succession. In disbelief, he asked Hyun-sung why he had bothered revealing all this to him. Hyun-sung began with a brief, boring history class of the Munjin family. He explained how Munjin Construction had become a giant in the apartment branding business. However, as the business grew, the sons became a problem. Go Chang-suk, in his ruthless ambition to secure his father's legacy, had done all sorts of despicable things. When Go Chang-bom found out, it led to a violent confrontation, where Go Chang-bom hit his brother so hard that it left him permanently disabled. Seeing his sons tearing each other apart, their father, Mungjin, decided neither was fit to inherit the family business. So he hired a professional manager to take the reins, propelling the company to the top of the conglomerate world. Hyun-sung then pointed out that, for the sake of the business, it was better that neither of the sons inherited it. Go Chang-bom, while not as vicious as his brother, had a nasty temper and was a complete brain-dead, with no aptitude for cutting down competitors. Meanwhile, Go Chang-shok was cunning and ruthless. But Hyun-sung had a proposition. He would help Go Chang-bom take revenge on Go Chang-shok and in the process, make him the chairman of Mungjin Construction. Upon hearing this ridiculous claim, Go Chang-bom couldn't help but laugh, as he wondered how an ordinary, useless kid who looked like he had not had a decent meal in years possibly helped me with that. But Hyun-sung, unfazed, explained that Go Chang-bom's current allies were filling his ears with sweet words while secretly serving Go Chang-suk's interests. Hyun-sung assured Go Chang-bom that he could decode Go Chang-suk's endgame. Seeing Go Chang-bom's skepticism, Hyun-sung asked for a chance to prove his loyalty and help him out. Needing some air after the heavy conversation, Go Chang-bom stepped outside to smoke. When a random buffon told him not to smoke there, Go Chang-bom lashed out, threatening to destroy the whole cafe. After calming down, Go Chang-bom remembered his father's warning. He had always been told to keep capable people close, especially since he was completely worthless and the only skill he had was breathing. Realizing he had little to lose, Go Chang-bom made his decision. He flicked away his cigarette and approached Hyun-sung, asking for the first step in the plan. Meanwhile, at Go Chang-suk's residence, he received a call informing him that his plan to get Go Chang-bom arrested had failed. Furious, Go Chang-suk hurled his phone across the room. But after a few deep breaths, he calmed himself, certain that nothing could stop him from becoming the successor. Back at the restaurant, Hyun-sung wasted no time. He told Go Chang-bom that the first step was for him to accept a harsh reality. He was, in every sense, a total waste. Unlike his younger brother, Go Chang-bom was a high school dropout with no real achievements. His brother, on the other hand, had graduated from a prestigious university and married into a respectable family. Go Chang-shuk had been planning and preparing his takeover for years, putting him at a significant advantage. Hyun-sung continued, explaining that the only reason their father hadn't already handed the business to Go Chang-shuk was because of an old, outdated tradition that the eldest son should be the successor. With that in mind, Hyun-sung revealed his master plan. The only way Go Chang-bom could beat his alpha brother was if Go Chang-shuk lost everything. If Go Chang-shuk were to be reduced to the same loser status as Go Chang-bom, then the playing field would be leveled. Their father would have to choose between two failures, and Go Chang-bom, as the eldest, would still hold the upper hand. Hyun-sung then revealed his plan to Go Chang-bom, explaining that in order to win the succession war against his brother, he would need three things. First, he needed a strong background. Go Chang-shuk already had an advantage through his marriage to a prestigious family, while Go Chang-bom had been wasting time making useless connections with Reddit mods and gold-digging IG baddies. Second, Go Chang-bom needed a good reputation, something he sorely lacked, as he was known around the city as a disgusting drunk who peed on himself. Third, he needed ability, and once again, Go Chang-shuk had proven himself in business, while Go Chang-bom had done nothing but waste time arguing in the comments of people's posts on social media. Hearing the harsh truth enraged Go Chang-bom, but Hyun-sung told him to hold his force, explaining that they could still turn these weaknesses into strengths. Starting with the background, they would separate Go Chang-shuk from his wife, cutting off his support from her influential family. The plan was quickly set in motion, and within weeks, Go Chang-suk's marriage collapsed due to his infidelity, which infuriated their father, Go Mungjin. Go Mungjin then berated Go Chang-shuk for acting irresponsibly. He even called him a pathetic bastard for behaving like a hormonal gens and ruining a valuable family alliance. Go Chang-shuk tried to apologize, but the old scrawny man lamented that both his sons were failures and thought he should have just left to get milk, and never returned instead of raising the worthless piece of trash. During the heated moment, Mungjin brought up the police case involving Go Chang-bom's violent outbursts. That instant, Go Chang-bom recalled Hyun-sung's advice to present himself as reformed and worthy of leadership. Shockingly, he apologized for his past behavior and promised to do better. This unexpected humility moved Go Mungjin, who, for the first time in Go Chang-bom's life, told him he was proud of him. Meanwhile, Go Chang-shuk seethed in anger, wondering how his wife had discovered his affair. He vowed revenge on whoever had leaked the information. At the same time, Go Chang-bom was still overwhelmed by the fact that his father had finally acknowledged him. Motivated, he linked up with Hyun-sung that night to thank him for helping him get that rare compliment. However, Hyun-sung reminded him not to get too excited like a fat kid when seeing a Snicker bar, as there were still 2 more stages of the succession plan to complete. Reluctantly, Go Chang-bom agreed to Hyun-sung's next suggestion, to join his father's company as a minor employee to build credibility. Although he hesitated at first, he couldn't ignore how much progress he had already made with Hyun-sung's guidance, so he accepted. Hyun-sung then reminded Go Chang-bom that their relationship was mutually beneficial, and it was now time for Go Chang-bom to fulfill this end of the bargain. Riding high on his father's approval, Go Chang-bom agreed to give Hyun-sung whatever he asked for. Weeks later at school, Kim Young-chol received a slap from Kim Sunja, Jung Min-ho's mother, for failing to expel Hyun-sung after the bullying incident. After she left, Kim Young-chol approached Hyun-sung, begging Hyun-sung to confess to assaulting Jung Min-ho and his friends, promising he would help minimize the punishment. However, Hyun-sung, aware of the pressure Kim Young-chol was under, calmly warned him to use his 2 brain cells in his fat head and realize the damage it would cause if his own bribery and infidelity were exposed. The day of the review meeting finally arrived, and everyone was shocked when Go Chang-bom, heir to the Myeongjin construction empire, appeared as Hyun-sung's guardian. Jung Min-ho was also present, accompanied by his mother, Kim Sunja. As the meeting began, Kim Young-chol, who was supposed to advise on Hyun-sung's punishment, shocked everyone by defending him instead. He revealed how Jung Min-ho and his gang had been bullying other students, framing Hyun-sung as the aggressor. A few minutes before Kim Young-chol defended Hyun-sung, he spotted Go Chang-bom with Hyu-sung, which stunned him that Hyu-sung had such a powerful guardian, more powerful than Jung Min-ho's parents. Realizing he would stand to gain more from supporting Hyu-sung, the greedy, ugly ass decided to switch lanes. Back in the present, Davwon, who had been bribed heavily by Kim Sunja, was baffled by Kim Young-chol's sudden defense of Hyun-sung. He wondered if the man was high on LSD. In disbelief, Davwon demanded Kim Young-chol address the matter of the assault on the boys, but Kim Young-chol instead continued to emphasize how Jung Min-ho and his gang had been terrorizing the entire school. With unwavering conviction, Kim Young-chol insisted that all students involved in the incident, not just Hyun-sung, should be held accountable. Hearing this fierce defense irritated the corrupt old cracky principal, who quickly silenced Kim Young-chol to prevent him from revealing too much. Davwon then turned to Jung Min-ho, asking him to explain what had happened that day. The liar capped all the way, claiming he had only been passing by when he saw Hyun-sung beating up his friend, Park Min-chol. He added that when he tried to intervene, Hyun-sung suddenly attacked him as well, leaving him beaten to a pulp. To sell his lies, Jung Min-ho even shed fake tears, appealing to the emotions of the judges and parents. He further claimed he had been assaulted not once but twice. At that moment, his deadbeat ugly mother, Kim Sunja, interrupted, trying to manipulate the parents present by warning them that if they allowed Hyun-sung's behavior to go unpunished, their own children could be next. Her twisted words successfully riled up the parents, who began to demand that Hyun-sung face severe punishment. Meanwhile, Park Min-chol and his gang were still laughing and playing mobile games in the hospital. They were confident that the school's judgment would favor them, especially with Kim Sunja, who was determined not to let her son's attacker escape unscathed on their side. Park Min-chol even assured his gang that, regardless of what happened to Hyun-sung, he would continue to bully the dude even to the afterlife. Back at the meeting, after hearing enough, Go Chang-bom slammed his fist on the table, demanding everyone's attention. He then pointed at Jung Min-ho and called him an ugly demon, urging the parents not to believe a word that came out of his disgusting liar mouth. Davwon, taken aback, warned Go Chang-bom not to insult a student in such a way, prompting Go Chang-bom to correct himself by calling Jung Min-ho a skinny under demon with the face of a lizard. Go Chang-bom continued by revealing that he had looked into Park Min-chol and his group, discovering they had a notorious reputation for harassing and robbing other students. Go Chang-bom then turned to Davwon, accusing him of covering up for these boys and asking whether he had been bribed. He then stated that Hyun-sung had only acted in self-defense, a claim confirmed by his advisor, hinting at Kim Young-chol. Go Chang-bom's defense of Hyun-sung infuriated Kim Sunja. She stood up and shouted at him for labeling her son a thug, demanding to know how he was related to Hyun-sung, as everyone knew Hyun-sung was an orphan abandoned by his useless father who never returned after going out to get milk. At that moment, Go Chang-bom smirked, flashing back to a conversation he had with Hyun-sung days earlier. While in the car, Hyun-sung had expressed his desire for Go Chang-bom to become his legal guardian. He explained that while money was important, he needed power to carry out his revenge plan. Hyun-sung revealed that he was planning to stir up trouble at school, which would inevitably lead to legal issues, and he needed Go Chang-bom's backing. With Go Chang-bom's protection, no one in the city would dare to touch him. In return, Hyun-sung promised to do everything in his power to ensure that Go Chang-bom would become the chairman of his father's company. So Go Chang-bom agreed to help. Back in the present, Kim Sunja demanded to know once again who Go Chang-bom was. Calmly, Go Chang-bom revealed that he was Hyun-sung's guardian and the eldest son of Myeongjin Construction Company. After this, Go Chang-bom addressed the audience, stating that Hyun-sung was his brother and was not someone who would cause trouble without reason. He went on to reveal that he had intended to be one of the school's sponsors under the Myeongjin Construction Company, but after seeing how corrupt the school had become, he was reconsidering. Go Chang-bom then threatened to turn the entire school upside down and ensure that none of the management staff or teachers who ignored Hyun-sung's years of being bullied and who supported the bullies for personal gain would remain unscathed. Hearing this threat, the school's management and teachers began to sweat like they were running under the scorching sun in the Sahara Desert. The old rotten principal, still reeling from shock, couldn't comprehend how Hyun-sung, who was supposed to be an orphan, with only a loser of a brother and a frail grandmother who should have died last week, could be connected to Go Chang-bom, the heir to the prestigious Myeongjin Construction Company. Realizing the opportunity, Dae-won decided to switch sides also, his lifelong ambition being to establish a connection with Myeongjin Construction. Dae-won, likewise, made a quick decision to cut ties with Jung Min-ho's family and align with Go Chang-bom, hoping to secure the school's sponsorship. With his mind made up, Dae-won addressed the room, declaring that Jung Min-ho was, in fact, the ringleader of the group terrorizing and bullying the entire student body. Upon hearing the shocking words that came out of the old fool's mouth, Kim Sunja was stunned by the sudden betrayal, so she yelled at the old idiot to shut up already before it was too late. But her words did nothing to deter him. Dae-won continued, revealing the truth, that Hyun-sung was one of the top-performing students and must have had a valid reason for his actions. Dae-won then suggested the committee give Hyun-sung a chance to share his side of the story. At that moment, Hyun-sung reflected on how quickly the tables had turned, all thanks to his newfound backing from the powerful Myeongjin family. He then calmly explained how Park Min-chol's group had been bullying students while the teachers turned a blind eye and defended the delinquents. He then admitted to hitting Jung Min-ho and being responsible for sending Park Min-chol and his gang to the hospital. However, he pointed out that he was only being targeted because he didn't come from a wealthy family, whereas Park Min-chol's group had been tormenting students for years without consequence. Hyun-sung then issued a warning. If justice wasn't served, he would expose the corruption at the school, dragging its prestigious name through the mud. The only way to avoid this was to punish Jung Min-ho and his gang for their evil actions. Upon hearing this, Kim Sunja became furious. She loudly proclaimed that her son would never be held accountable for such crimes. She immediately called her husband, informing him of the betrayal by Dae-won and Kim Young-chol, who were now framing Jung Min-ho for the violence. She also revealed that everyone had turned on them because they discovered Hyun-sung's sponsor was none other than Go Chang-bom, the eldest son of Myeongjin Construction. After she let out those words, her cowardly husband ordered Kim Sunja to leave Jung Min-ho to face the consequences on his own and to return home at once, fearing that staying involved would destroy their family's reputation. His words left Kim Sunja utterly stunned. Later that night, as Hyun-sung lay on the floor unwinding from the stress of the day, he thought about how the school management had finally handed down its judgment. Jung Min-ho and his gang were expelled, while Hyun-sung was sentenced to 100 hours of volunteer work for fighting on school grounds. After the ruling, Hyun-sung encountered Jung Min-ho in the school hallway. Upon seeing him, Jung Min-ho rushed forward, ready to retaliate, but his punch was stopped by his mother, who ordered him to kneel and beg for forgiveness. Stunned by her demand, Jung Min-ho hesitated. His mother had never asked him to do something so humiliating. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he reluctantly knelt down and begged Hyun-sung. After this humiliation, Hyun-sung leaned close and whispered in Jung Min-ho's ear, telling him that his apology was total horseshit to him. Hyun-sung then promised to make Jung Minho's future a living nightmare from that day forward. Back in the present, Hyun-sung's phone buzzed with a message from Park Min-chol begging for a meeting. A few minutes later that same night, Hyun-sung went out to meet Park Min-chol. Upon arriving, Park Min-chol immediately bowed his head and began to apologize profusely for the years of bullying, pleading for Hyun-sung to let it go. He revealed that a teacher had told him that if he could get Hyun-sung's forgiveness, he might avoid expulsion. Desperate, Park Min-chol promised to do anything for Hyun-sung in the future, from running errands to becoming his personal slave, as long as he was forgiven and allowed to stay in school. As Hyun-sung listened, he thought about how Park Min-chol and his gang were Yunjins and how expulsion could ruin their lives forever. Sensing that Hyun-sung remained silent, Park Min-chol became even more desperate and revealed that he and his friends had followed orders to bully students. Just as he was about to expose the identity of the person who gave the orders, Hyun-sung cut him off, telling him he already knew. This revelation shocked Park Min-chol. Years earlier, after Hyun-sung had fallen into a coma, a bullied student had jumped from the rooftop of the school, leaving behind a note exposing the secret organization known as the Golden Circle. This group recruited students from wealthy, powerful families in prestigious schools and turned them into bullies in exchange for ensuring their academic success. Although the identities of the core members remained a mystery, Hyun-sung realized that to exact his revenge on those who had pushed him to his death, he would need to expose and dismantle the Golden Circle. Back to the present, Hyun-sung then asked Park Min-chol how he had been recruited by the Golden Circle. Park Min-chol admitted that he had been brought in by Shin Yangmin, a notorious third-year student infamous for bullying the entire school. Hearing this, Hyun-sung considered using Shin Yangmin to draw out the Golden Circle, but he knew that Shin Yangmin was a badass Sigma, strong and ruthless, with the physique of an MMA fighter. Attacking him head-on would be a challenge. For the moment, Hyun-sung set aside thoughts of Shin Yangmin and focused on dealing with Park Min-chol. Grabbing him by the collar, Hyun-sung coldly informed him that the word forgiveness no longer existed in his vocabulary. From now on, anytime they crossed paths, Park Min-chol would face a beating. With that, Hyun-sung repeatedly smacked Park Min-chol's head, leaving him in a state of fear and shock. The next day, rumors spread throughout the school about how Hyun-sung had brutalized Park Min-chol and his gang. As Hyun-sung walked into class, students stared at him in awe and fear. Just then, Lee Jung-min, the ugly fatso, approached him, thanking him for getting rid of the bullies and acting like a hero. But his words irritated Hyun-sung, because throughout the entire investigation and meeting, the useless waste of space had never once stood up to testify against the bullies or support Hyun-sung. Now, he suddenly wanted to talk because the bullies were gone. Hyun-sung harshly told him to keep the same energy, and that he didn't care about him or his donut-shaped head. He could die for all he cared. Then, he told Lee Jung-min to get lost, never wanting to see his fat, Shrek face again. Meanwhile, in another scene, Shin Yangmin reported to a mysterious dude that Park Min-chol and his gang had been expelled, and their plans had been ruined. He also mentioned that before their expulsion, they were beaten like thieves by Hyun-sung, who had now become untouchable thanks to the backing of the powerful Namjin construction. Despite the current state of the school, with the administration closely monitoring cases of bullying, Shin Yangmin refused to give up. He saw this as an opportunity to make even more money through intimidation and bullying, capitalizing on the chaos. Back in class, Hyun-sung pondered on how to get the attention of the Golden Circle. He realized that to do so, he would need to perform excellently academically and raise his grades. Later that day, Hyun-sung headed to a rundown gym, where he sought out Jung Do-cheol, the city's first MMA fighter to become a world champion, now a washed-up, forgotten loser. Determined to learn how to fight, Hyun-sung entered the gym with a clear goal: to gain the strength and skills needed to take on the Golden Circle. At the same time, on the school rooftop, Park Jin-woo, a first-year student with the face of a traumatized gorilla, had been summoned by Shin Yangmin. Once there, Shin Yangmin instructed him to make life unbearable for Hyun-sung to the point where he would break down mentally. Meanwhile, at the scrappy gym, Hyun-sung finally met the washed-up former champion, Jung Do-cheol. He wasted no time and told him that he needed to learn how to fight. Intrigued but cautious, Jung Do-cheol asked why Hyun-sung wanted to learn, and Hyun-sung revealed that his goal was to crush all the bullies who had tormented him in school. Jung Do-cheol, unimpressed by his reason for learning how to fight, immediately refused. He made it clear that his gym wasn't a place where people learned to fight just to beat others up. Seeing how reluctant Jung Ducheol was, Hyun-sung quickly pondered how to win him over. He remembered that Jung Ducheol's career had been ruined because he was caught using illegal substances, though even now, as a washed-up coach running a crummy gym, he still managed to train a top fighter, Kim Wyeol. Using this information, Hyun-sung told Jung Ducheol that he was willing to go to any lengths to get his help, just like Ducheol had done in the past, even venturing into using illegal substances to achieve what he wanted. Even after that bold statement, Jung Ducheol started to walk away, still refusing to train him. In a last-ditch effort, Hyun-sung offered him $100 million to become his coach. The temptation of that much money proved too much for the broke-ass coach. He then reluctantly agreed to train Hyun-sung, but laid down two conditions. First, Hyun-sung could never, under any circumstances, resort to using drugs like he did. Desperate for his help, Hyun-sung agreed. The second condition was that Hyun-sung had to last 3 minutes with him in the ring, a test to prove his hunger and determination. Hyun-sung accepted, knowing it was the only way to get his needed help. Later that day, Hyun-sung returned home to his elderly grandmother, who was immediately alarmed by his bruised and battered appearance. She demanded to know why he looked like he had been hit by a helicopter. A few hours ago, Hyun-sung had entered the octagon with Jung Ducheol, where the real test began. Ducheol had challenged him to survive 3 minutes inside the octagon, promising that if he could endure it, he would take Hyun-sung on as a student and train him to be the best. As the fight commenced, Hyun-sung adopted a basic fighting stance, holding his hands above his chin. Jung Ducheol, seeing how awkward and amateurish Hyun-sung's stance was like that of an 80-year-old grandmother. Still, he noticed something important. Hyun-sung showed no fear. Without warning, Jung Ducheol launched a powerful punch directly at Hyun-sung's face. Although Hyun-sung managed to block it by guarding, the force of the impact sent him crashing to the ground, blood pouring from his nose. He lay there, stunned from the blow, while the world around him spun. Standing over him, Jung Ducheol told him to get up, reminding him that only 10 seconds had passed. The agreement was to survive 3 full minutes. With unyielding determination and a bleeding nose, Hyun-sung prepared himself for another blow. Despite his chin guarding his face, Jung Ducheol delivered a punch without hesitation. However, the assault abruptly stopped, causing Hyun-sung to wonder if the relentless trainer had grown tired. However, before he could react, a brutal low kick to his ribs sent him crashing to the ground. As Hyun-sung lay on the floor, Jung Ducheol urged him to surrender, but Hyun-sung, never one to give up, struggled to his feet. The barrage of punches resumed, landing heavily as he tried to shield his face with his hands. He attempted to strike back, but Jung Ducheol easily deflected the punch and capitalized on the opening with a devastating uppercut that knocked Hyun-sung out. Seeing Hyun-sung sprawled out, Jung Ducheol assumed the fight was over and began to leave. To his surprise, he heard a voice behind him. Hyun-sung, battered but defiant, declaring that the fight would continue. Jung Ducheol, taken aback, warned him that the time for child's play was over and that he would no longer go easy on him. Jung Ducheol then swung a punch, which Hyun-sung managed to block. However, expecting another low kick, Hyun-sung braced himself. Instead, he received a vicious low jab to his liver, an excruciating pain unlike anything he had felt before. He crashed to the ground once more. Seeing the weakling sprawled on the floor, Jung Ducheol urged him to give up and go home. Struggling with his inner demons and driven by a fierce desire for revenge, Hyun-sung fought through the pain. Memories of his time in a coma flashed through his mind, fueling his determination. With sheer willpower, he slowly rose to his feet and assumed his fighting stance, surprising Jung Ducheol, who knew that even seasoned fighters would struggle to withstand such a liver shot. Undeterred, Jung Ducheol charged at Hyun-sung, delivering a punishing blow that pulverized his nose. Yet the Giga Chad remained standing like a man possessed, his resilience almost supernatural. Jung Ducheol continued his assault with a low jab to Hyun-sung's solar plexus, followed by a punch to his face. Just then, the timer signaled the end of the 3-minute round. Jung Ducheol, exhausted and impressed by Hyun-sung's tenacity, walked out of the ring, instructing him to get medical attention and to transfer the $100 million training fee to his account. In the present, Hyun-sung lied to his grandmother, telling her he was involved in a school fight. A few minutes later, Hyun-sung urged his grandmother to enroll in the apartment subscription program offered by Myeongjin Construction. Although his grandmother was concerned about the financial implications, Hyun-sung reassured her, explaining that he had spoken with Go Chang-bom, who assured him her name would be on the list. Hyun-sung saw this as a way to repay his grandmother for all she had done for him. The next day at school, Shin Yangmin praised Park Jin-woo for supposedly beating Hyun-sung. Hearing this, Park Jin-woo was taken aback, as he was not responsible for Hyun-sung's injuries. Confused but seizing the opportunity, Park Jin-woo played along, taking credit for Hyun-sung's disfigured face. Park Jin-woo, after meeting Shin Yangmin on the rooftop on his way to the class, paused and wondered who must have been responsible for the total makeover on Hyun-sung's face. The moron then concluded that if Hyun-sung could be beaten so badly, he might not be as formidable as previously thought. Determined to confront Hyun-sung if their paths crossed, Park Jin-woo then sent a freshman minion to warn all other freshmen not to associate with Hyun-sung if they wanted to avoid trouble. Over the following weeks, Chung Do-cheol trained Hyun-sung like Creed. Despite the grueling physical demands, Hyun-sung pressed on, driven by his goal to confront Shin Yangmin and the Golden Circle. However, Chung Do-cheol was deeply impressed by Hyun-sung's determination and revealed that after his ban from fighting due to drug use, he had researched natural methods to enhance strength without illegal substances. He promised to apply this knowledge to Hyun-sung's training to make him the strongest man alive. Before long, Hyun-sung was approached by Kim Soo-woo, a classmate and longtime buddy. Kim Soo revealed that despite the threats from Park Jin-woo, he felt compelled to stay friends with Hyun-sung. Kim Soo-woo had been Hyun-sung's friend since elementary school and had stood up for him against Park Min-chul and his gang, even enduring harassment and a broken leg in the process. He had visited Hyun-sung during his coma and regretted leaving him out of fear of further retaliation. Hyun-sung, concerned about Kim Soo-woo's safety and not wanting anyone else to get hurt because of his revenge mission, asked him to distance himself. Kim Soo-woo left with a promise to return, unwilling to abandon a friend who had been bullied. Throughout the day, Hyun-sung pondered the best way to distance himself from Kim Soo-woo without hurting his feelings. However, as the day ended and Kim Soo-woo didn't return, Hyun-sung considered it might be for the best. Suddenly, Hyun-sung overheard two boys discussing Kim Soo-woo's abduction by Park Jin-woo. Alarmed by the news, Hyun-sung feared for his friend's safety and rushed to save him. Meanwhile, Park Jin-woo cornered Kim Soo-woo in the boys' restroom, demanding to know why he defied his order to avoid hanging out with Hyun-sung. Kim Soo-woo, unfazed, fired back, telling the bald freak that his oversized head must be full of muscle, suffocating his brain. He then boldly declared that Park Jin-woo had no right to dictate who he could or couldn't associate with. Infuriated, Park Jin-woo called Kim Soo-woo a lackey scumbag, but before he could finish the insult, Kim Soo-woo launched a powerful Liu Kang high kick straight to Jin-woo's massive head, sending him crashing to the floor. Recovering from the blow, Park Jin-woo ordered his henchmen to wipe the bathroom floor with Kim Soo-woo's face. The brainwashed morons then attacked from all sides, but Kim Soo-woo managed to drop one of them and knock another out cold. However, the numbers game soon overwhelmed him, and after taking a punch to the face, he immediately retaliated with a powerful punch that sent one of his attackers flying. Despite his best efforts, Park Jin-woo's squad eventually overpowered Kim Soo-woo, giving Jin-woo the chance to punch and slap him repeatedly, threatening to beat him up every day, twice on Sundays. Just then, Hyun-sung stormed into the restroom, seething with anger, as he had been fighting against this very kind of bullying. Realizing he needed to approach this situation differently, Hyun-sung decided to provoke Park Jin-woo instead. He taunted him, calling him a starved Thanos and a spineless, fat, ugly coward who always relied on others to do his dirty work. The insults enraged Park Jin-woo, making the veins on his humongous head bulge as if he were about to burst. In a fit of rage and frustration over being roasted like sushi, Park Jin-woo charged at Hyun-sung, determined to send him into another coma, this time for 1,000,000 years. But his attack was as useless as his ugly fat face. Hyun-sung then landed a punch that snapped Jin-woo's head back. Without holding back, Hyun-sung pummeled him, using Park Jin-woo like a punching bag, delivering blow after blow to his face and body. Frustrated and realizing his attacks were futile, Park Jin-woo made one last attempt to strike, only to be met with a crushing uppercut that dropped him flat on the floor, leaving his dumb followers stunned. Seeing that Hyun-sung was serious about beating him senseless, Park Jin-woo began to beg for his life. Hyun-sung then ordered him to publicly confess that he had lied when he claimed to have beaten him up. Trembling, Park Jin-woo confessed in front of everyone, revealing that it was Shin Yangmin who had forced him to bully Hyun-sung and the other students. After the confession, Hyun-sung warned Jinwoo never to lay a hand on Kim Soo-woo or any other student again, or else he'd be carried out of school on a stretcher. To drive the point home, Hyun-sung smashed Jinwoo's head into the ground, giving him one final warning. If he bullied anyone again, Hyun-sung would chase him to the ends of the earth and annihilate him. Shortly after the fight, Hyun-sung took Kim Soo-woo to the clinic and sternly told him never to interfere with his affairs again. Kim Soo-woo tried to remind Hyun-sung that they were friends and that he couldn't just stand by when people bullied him. However, Hyun-sung coldly responded that he was on a bloody mission of revenge, one that Kim Soo-woo had no place in because he was too weak, having barely survived his encounter with Park Jin-woo. With that, Hyun-sung walked out, leaving Kim Soo-woo dejected, reminding him one last time not to get in his way, as the friend he once knew was long gone. Meanwhile, in class, Shin Young-min reflected on his success in harassing students and the money he had made over the past few months through the Golden Circle. His peaceful thoughts were abruptly interrupted when Hyun-sung stormed into the room. Shin Young-min, startled, wondered who this nutcase was that dared to intrude on his peace. Without wasting any time, Hyun-sung bluntly called the stoner ass face a bastard. Shin Young-min, curious about where this sudden confidence came from, stared at him. In the blink of an eye, Hyun-sung lunged at him, landing a precise kick aimed at Shin Young-min's head, but Shin Young-min managed to block the attack. Perplexed, Shin Young-min asked why Hyun-sung was acting all cray-cray and what his issue was. Hyun-sung didn't bother answering his useless question and instead continued his relentless assault. Shin Young-min skillfully defended, keeping up a high guard to block every strike. After a series of failed attempts, Hyun-sung finally landed a powerful blow to Shin Young-min's ribs, sending him staggering backwards and clutching his solar plexus in pain. Hyun-sung didn't give him a moment to recover, attacking again with full force, even whipping him with a chair. It was then that Shin Young-min realized his attacker was a man on a mission to end him. So when Hyun-sung aimed another punch at his face, Shin Young-min managed to stop the blow and retaliated with a punch of his own. The two began trading blows, neither holding back. Before long, Shin Young-min started to gain the upper hand, relentlessly pounding Hyun-sung, who struggled to maintain his guard. In a desperate move, Hyun-sung gathered all his remaining strength and Roman Reigns speared Shin Young-min, sending him crashing into the window. At that moment, the other students, who had been watching the fight in stunned silence, rushed to separate the two. But Hyun-sung, determined to finish what he started, resisted. As they dragged him out of the classroom, Hyun-sung promised Shin Young-min that he wouldn't rest until he sent him to meet his maker. Left standing in disbelief, Shin Young-min wondered how he had ended up tangling with someone who seemed straight out of a mental asylum. Shortly after the fight between Hyun-sung and Shin Young-min, Kim Young-chol was called to the scene. He was shocked to see the extent of the damage and couldn't believe Hyun-sung was responsible. Kim Young-chol wondered if the principal would overlook this incident like he did the last time. Shortly afterwards, to Kim Young-chol's surprise, Davwon told him to let it go. He'd explained that from that on, they had to ignore and cover up all of Hyun-sung's actions because the school needed the sponsorship that Go Chang-bom was offering. They couldn't afford to lose it. Davwon then instructed Kim Young-chol to personally handle all of Hyun-sung's messes and promised a hefty reward in return. Excited by the offer, Kim Young-chol readily agreed to take care of the school's MVP until he graduated. Just as they finalized the agreement, a random buffon burst into the principal's office, announcing that the pretty boy had been hit. On hearing this news, both men were left aghast, wondering who dared lay a hand on Hyun-sung, the school's prized student. A few minutes later, Shin Young-min, the culprit, was brought into the office. When questioned about why he attacked Hyun-sung, Shin Young-min explained that he was the one who had been attacked first. But Kim Young-chol didn't believe a word, assuming Shin Young-min was lying. Frustrated that his side of the story was being ignored, Shin Young-min angrily shouted that he nearly lost his life, even falling from a window after being thrown by Hyun-sung. He added that there were plenty of students who could testify as witnesses. Still, Kim Young-chol dismissed his claims, calling his supposed witnesses disgusting liars that Shin Young-min had likely coerced. Realizing that both the principal and Kim Young-chol were determined to protect Hyun-sung, Shin Young-min understood that they had either been bribed or had something to gain. Knowing this fight wouldn't be as easy as he thought, he'd apologized and left the office. As he walked out, Shin Young-min was seething. Kim Young-chol had clearly taken Hyun-sung's side, and with graduation approaching, he knew he couldn't let this drag him down. Determined to solve the problem, he reached out to Kang Tae-gu, the regional broker of the Golden Circle, who promised to help. Later, Kang Tae-gyu visited Da-won, demanding to know if he was giving Hyun-sung special treatment, and if so, why. He warned that he wouldn't let it slide. Laughing, Da-won informed him that threats like that didn't work in the city. Undeterred, Kang Tae-gyu went to the police to report that Hyun-sung had brutally beaten 4 students before, nearly isekaiing them, and nothing had been done. The police officer responded that the case had been ruled as self-defense, and they couldn't ruin a student's life over it. As for the current fight, the officer added that if they punished Hyun-sung, they'd also have to arrest Shin Young-min. This infuriated Kang Tae-gyu, who'd yelled at the officer, calling them useless and threatening to expose online how the prestigious school favored Hyun-sung due to bribes. But the officer remained unfazed, telling Kang Tae-gyu that no one in the city cared about what was posted online. Stunned, Kang Tae-gyu wondered what had happened to the town and why everyone seemed so corrupt. A few minutes later, Kang Tae-gyu received a call from Shin Young-min. After explaining the situation, Shin Young-min told him that the town was small and everyone knew each other. It was obvious that Da-won was hesitant to answer because he was working with the local cartel. Shin Young-min added that the problem with the local cartel was their territorial nature. They were fiercely loyal to each other and never allowed outsiders in. He explained to Kang Tae-gyu that since many public officials were part of the cartel, they were all siding with Da-won, making it almost impossible to gather any useful information. Hearing this, Kang Tae-gyu became enraged, realizing the task he had taken on was far more complicated than he initially thought. If he failed, the Golden Circle would simply send another broker, and his life would be over instantly. Regret washed over Kang Tae-gyu as he realized he was in over his head, unable to come up with a solution. Desperate, he called Shin Young-min, telling him he couldn't continue the job. Since Shin Young-min was the one who had received a commission for the task, it was up to him to finish it. Confused and frustrated, Shin Young-min didn't understand why Kang Tae-gyu was backing out after agreeing to help. Their argument escalated until Kang Tae-gyu suggested an idea to Shin Young-min to find a way to lower Hyun-sung's grades. If his grades tanked, he would never get accepted into the Golden Circle. After revealing this plan, Kang Tae-gyu reminded Shin Young-min that if he failed or gave up, the Golden Circle wouldn't hesitate to punish him. The next day, rumors buzzed around school about Shin Young-min's battered face. The students wondered if Hyun-sung had followed through on his promise to make Shin Young-min's life unbearable. Meanwhile, the night before, Hyun-sung had indeed tracked Shin Young-min down and confronted him. He stabbed Shin Young-min in the head, coldly asking if the commission he received from the Golden Circle was worth more than his life. Hyun-sung warned him that messing with him would lead to expulsion, conviction, and ultimately, a life of misery, hunted by Myeongjin Construction. With nowhere to run, Shin Young-min would be forced to leave the city. Terrified by the grim future laid out before him, Shin Young-min begged for mercy, asking what Hyun-sung wanted. Hyun-sung's only reply was that he wanted to destroy everyone who had wronged him. Without hesitation, Hyun-sung grabbed Shin Young-min and beat him mercilessly, breaking his nose and leaving him in a state of utter defeat. Back in the present, as Shin Young-min sat in class, the memory of Hyun-sung's brutal attack filled him with anger. Yet he felt powerless due to the people backing Hyun-sung. He briefly considered letting the matter go, but then remembered the Golden Circle would come for him if he didn't finish the job. Frustrated, he slammed his fist on the table, regretting ever accepting the commission. His only hope now was to see Hyun-sung's grades drop, giving him time to rethink his strategy. At the same time, Hyun-sung sat in class, thinking about how effective his threat had been. But he knew the peace wouldn't last. After the upcoming exams, everything could change. He needed to score perfectly, as that would be the pivotal moment in his plan. In the following weeks, Hyun-sung trained relentlessly with his coach, impressing Jung Do-cheol with his determination. Jung Do-cheol even remarked that Hyun-sung had enough talent to become a professional boxer if he wanted to. After another grueling training session, Jung Do-cheol told Hyun-sung to take a break. As Hyun-sung left the gym, he bumped into Kim Soo, who was just arriving. A few days prior, while still in the hospital, Kim Soo reflected on Hyun-sung's words about revenge and how he was no longer the person he used to be. He recalled how Hyun-sung's only wish was to succeed and make his grandmother proud, but now he had transformed into a mental case fueled by vengeance. The loss of his only friend hurt Kim Soo deeply, bringing him to tears. Just then, a random idiot burst into the hospital, informing Kim Soo that Hyun-sung and Shin Young-min had gotten into a brutal fight. so intense they crashed through the school window and nearly fell from the building. Hearing this brought a spark of hope to Kim Soo-woo. Despite Hyun-sung claiming they were no longer friends, his actions proved otherwise. Hyun-sung had defended him, showing that their bond still mattered. With newfound determination, Kim Soo-woo resolved to grow stronger, not just for himself, but for his friend, Hyun-sung. Back in the present, as Kim Soo-woo entered the gym, Hyun-sung immediately understood his intentions, so he quickly approached Jung Do-cheol, trying to dissuade him from accepting Kim Soo-woo's gym subscription. However, the ultimate brokey coach placed his hand on Kim Soo-woo's shoulder, leading him to the office while telling Hyun-sung to head home. Jung Do-cheol then made it clear that who trained in his gym was his decision alone. In the office, Jung Do-cheol asked Kim Soo-woo why he wanted to learn kickboxing. Kim Soo-woo replied that his goal was to help Hyun-sung fight off the bullies at school. Realizing he might be enrolling yet another nutjob on a revenge mission, Jung Do-cheol initially refused, saying he already had one mental case already and didn't need another. Desperate, Kim Soo-woo showed the scars and wounds he had accumulated from defending Hyun-sung. He explained that the school was worse than a mental institution, with students and teachers alike being completely out of control. Kim Soo-woo then even offered some cash, promising to find a part-time job if the subscription fee wasn't enough. Moved by Kim Soo-woo's determination to protect his friend, Jung Do-cheol finally agreed but warned him that the training would be tough. The next day, Kim Soo-woo arrived at the gym on time, ready to start his training. As he entered, he ran into Hyun-sung, who coldly reminded him that while the coach might have accepted him, he hadn't. He then challenged Kim Soo-woo to the octagon, asking him to prove his commitment to their so-called friendship. Kim Soo-woo, resolute, told Hyun-sung that he was willing to endure anything because together they were stronger. Without warning, Hyun-sung charged at him. Kim Soo-woo quickly raised his guard and began defending himself, using both his legs and hands to counterattack. His precise blows surprised Hyun-sung, who remembered that Kim Soo-woo used to be a skilled athlete. Kim Soo-woo, a former taekwondo fighter with gold medals under his belt, had given up the sport after losing a competition due to an unfair referee decision. As the fight raged on, Kim Soo-woo eventually fell to the ground, but Hyun-sung didn't stop. He continued to rain blows on Kim Soo-woo's face, explaining the high catch technique in MMA, which allows fighters to keep attacking even when their opponent was on the ground. Despite the relentless assault, Kim Soo-woo had a flashback to their childhood when Hyun-sung had stood up for him. Refusing to give up on their friendship, Kim Soo-woo, bruised and battered, kept his guard up, telling Hyun-sung that he would never stop fighting for him. But Hyun-sung wasn't moved. He kept attacking from all angles, destroying Kim Soo-woo's face. Oddly, Kim Soo-woo started laughing as if he was enjoying the pain, which shocked Hyun-sung into stopping. Confused, Hyun-sung asked Kim Soo-woo if everything was okay with him upstairs and why he was so desperate to team up with him on this revenge mission. Kim Soo-woo revealed that when they were kids, he was bullied daily and couldn't even tell his grandparents. It was Hyun-sung who stepped in to defend him, and for that, he would never forget. That moment, Jung Do-cheol, who had been watching the fight, recognized the determination in both boys. He walked into the octagon and told them to stop their pointless fight. Instead, he offered to train them both, promising to help them reach the top if they worked together. After witnessing the natural talent both boys possessed, Jung Do-cheol approached Hyun-sung with an enticing offer. He suggested that Hyun-sung drop out of the asylum he called school and pursue a career as a professional MMA fighter instead. Jung Do-cheol then promised to take him to the top of the sport if he accepted. However, Hyun-sung rejected the offer, stating that he wasn't interested in fighting for sport. His only burning desire was revenge. Despite Jung Do-cheol's persistence, Hyun-sung made it clear that if the coach kept insisting, he would call off their partnership and they would go their separate ways. Later, as Hyun-sung and Kim Soo-woo walked home, Hyun-sung asked Kim Soo-woo if he was absolutely sure about joining him in his quest for revenge. Kim Soo-woo confirmed that he was. With that, Hyun-sung laid down 3 conditions. First, Kim Soo-woo had to train with him every day, to which Kim Soo-woo agreed. Second, Kim Soo-woo would only involve himself in matters he could handle, leaving impossible fights and legal issues to Hyun-sung, a condition Kim Soo-woo accepted reluctantly. Lastly, Kim Soo-woo had to accept a monthly allowance from Memjin Construction without asking any questions about its source, which he also agreed to, though with hesitation. Later on, when Hyun-sung arrived home, he found his brother, Hyun-jin, watching a championship match. He immediately headed to the kitchen to prepare a meal for them both when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Jung Duchul, apologizing for pushing him to become an MMA fighter despite knowing he wasn't interested. Several weeks later, during the midterm test, the teacher handed out the exam papers, encouraging the students to do their best and avoid cheating. At that moment, Hyun-sung knew that he needed to achieve perfect scores to have any chance of infiltrating the Golden Circle and gathering the information necessary to bring down the organization. As he answered the test questions, some triggered memories from his past life, but his desire for revenge fueled him to push forward, determined to get the highest marks possible. After the midterms, the results were handed back, and students were asked to grade themselves. At that moment, Oh Hae-ji, a girl with a striking resemblance to Pennywise, approached Hyun-sung. Despite confessing her feelings for him in their first year, she had been rejected for being too damn ugly. However, since she was well known around the school, Hyun-sung decided to use her popularity as a tool. Reluctantly, he allowed her to check his test results. When she saw his perfect score of 100 in every subject, she was stunned. The next day, Hyun-sung called Kim Young-chol to the school's rooftop for an important discussion. The teacher, as expected, began praising him for being the top-ranked student in the school, but Hyun-sung brushed off the flattery. He cut to the chase and asked Kim Young-chol if he had any information about the Golden Circle, catching the teacher off guard. Will Hyun-sung be able to infiltrate the Golden Circle and gather the information he needs to bring down the evil organization? Comment Golden Circle if you're eager to find out in our part 2. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content like this. As always, thanks for watching.